Good morning, everyone. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Odds Breaker. We are here for UFC 267, where we have Jan Blachowicz taking on Glover-Teixeira in a light heavyweight matchup. For all the marbles, we also have Peter Yan taking on Corey Sandhagen for a bantamweight belt. Incredible night of fights on Fight Island. Get ready, buckle up, because here we go. First fight of the night, where we have Tagir Ulanbekov coming off of a UFC victory over Bruno Silva, where he had to dig much deeper than many expected as minus 500 favorite. Ulanbekov coming in against Nascimento as a minus 390 betting favorite, 9,400 in DraftKings. Nascimento, you may be familiar with him from the Contender Series, where he took on Holland Paiva and fought a very competitive bout there. A number of fighters on this card you're going to recognize that they haven't competed since the pandemic, since the COVID pandemic. Nascimento, shoot-a-box fighter, coming in at plus 290, 6,800 in DraftKings. Both of these fighters, 30 years of age. This fight's expected to go to a decision at minus 170. I see Ulanbekov being the more active fighter at range. Very, very long fighter. Interesting physique. He rolls with Khabib's crew. Came in with a big head of steam into the UFC, and you look back at that Bruno Silva fight, and that fight has aged fairly well. I'll be picking Tagir Ulanbekov in this spot. Next up, second fight of the night, where we have Yaozong Hu versus Hu-Petroski. You watch the weigh-ins here, and there looked like there was a massive discrepancy in size, and then you go back and you see Yaozong has fought at heavyweight before, dropped to light heavyweight, and then now is at middleweight, taking on Petroski, who has the wrestling, but also Hu was a Greco-Roman wrestler before getting started in mixed martial arts. Hu, man, he has fought some low-level competition in the UFC, seemed to be growing every time out, still 26 years of age. Petroski should fall back on his wrestling here. This fight isn't expected to go to a decision at minus 185. I think that we're going to see Hu on his back for significant stretches here. I'll be picking Petroski here as a minus 225 favorite. Something to be considering is Petroski has a tendency to gas in fights, and we've seen him quit when the going gets tough. If Hu somehow is able to last here, extend this fight into the third round or so, then I think he becomes much more live. But you have to wonder about the inactivity on his part, and has he been able to develop that? It's a 7,600 priced underdog in DraftKings, plus 185 at the betting window. I think that you want to see a little bit more before you start rostering somebody like you. So give me Petroski. I think he has the wrestling edge to make this his victory. Third fight of the night, where we have Makwan Amirkhani taking on Lerone Murphy. Makwan Amirkhani, this is his 11th UFC fight, coming in as a plus 230 underdog. We know Makwan is pretty much a first round or bust type fighter. Will most likely win the first round in many of his fights, depending on the competition. 16-6 overall record. Lerone Murphy has yet to taste defeat inside of the octagon. Now, 30 years of age. Murphy has a will to win. He has a gas tank. He does not necessarily have defensive grappling. So Amirkhani could come out here to cause Murphy, big problems, minus 295 at the betting window for Murphy. I think the better play here is if this fight gets extended to the second or third round, take a look at the Murphy props there. I saw plus 500, plus 550-ish, 9,300 in DraftKings for Murphy. If Murphy's on his back, getting smothered, controlled, that's a problem. If you have him rostered on DraftKings, minus 140 that this fight is expected to finish inside the distance. I think you're going to see either Makwan Amirkhani early or Lerone Murphy late. And I'll be picking Lerone Murphy as big of a fan as I've been of Makwan Amirkhani through the years. We know that he does typically only have about 5 to 7 minutes of gas before the wheels fall off. He was beating Shane Burgos pretty handily in that first round, and it's happened a number of times. So give me Lerone Murphy there. Next fight up, where we have Mikhail Oleksiejczuk taking on Shamil Gamzatov. Gamzatov, PFL veteran, still youngster out there. Both of these fighters relatively young. Oleksiejczuk, 15-4 overall record. We know defensively he doesn't have the defensive wrestling. He should be fighting at middleweight. It's interesting to see him continue on up at light heavyweight. Minus 105 at the betting window. Still love his fluid striking here. Gamzatov, 14-0, unblemished record. You'll notice that there are a few undefeated fighters on this Fight Island card. Gamzatov, tough as nails, though he's a plotting type fighter. And I think that we're going to see Oleksiejczuk come in here and have success on the feet. He's got to be willing to use his evasiveness. I think that could be a difference maker here. He's got to use his wheels and and make sure that he's getting the better of the striking exchanges, which I suspect he will. But he has a tendency to get out-grappled. So give me Oleksiejczuk in this fight. Next up, Alessio Zaleski dos Santos taking on Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit Saint-Denis, French fighter, only 25 years of age, has a lot of submission victories to his credit. Coming in here against a seasoned UFC veteran, dos Santos looked to have a size advantage at the weigh-ins. Dos Santos minus 235 betting favorite, a little wide for my liking here, though. You look a little bit deeper, and this is a situation where you have an undefeated fighter who's coming up, getting a big test against a dangerous striker in Dos Santos, who may not be the biggest volume striker, but when he does strike, he makes each strike count. He's going to be throwing wheel kicks, and he's going to try to surprise Saint-Denis, who's very, he looks like he's stuck in molasses when he's moving around on the feet. Clunky. So give me Dos Santos. I think that he has some veteran tactics, veteran tricks up his sleeve. And this fight is not expected to go to a decision at minus 186. So I'm going to be picking Alessio Zaleski dos Santos in that matchup. Then we have next up Albert Duraev taking on Roman Kopylov. Duraev is coming in with a head of steam here. Tremendous grappler, fighting out of a great camp. Has run into some issues in the past, getting sparked out. May not have the best chin in the world. He's going to have to be careful closing distance against Roman Kopylov, who we haven't seen him in a while. Granted, the loss to Carl Roberson has not aged well. This line has widened significantly to a point where Duraev is now minus 385 at the betting window, 9,200 in DraftKings. Kopylov coming in $7,000 plus 285 at the betting window. Duraev, most likely see a submission victory in his future here. 14-3 overall record. Looks like he's been putting in work. Kopylov, though, not sure what you're going to get, considering he spent some time away from competing. So he looked a lot bigger on the scales. I'll give him that. I want to see what that first round looks like. He might get snuffed out early. Not going to be able to use the cage, the back, to get back to his feet. A lot of these fighters, one of the things about the smaller octagon, granted, yes, you do get taken down, but you don't have that cage right next to you to get back up. A lot of fighters are great at using the cage to get back up. I haven't seen that necessarily from Kopylov, so I'll be picking Duraev. And inside the distance, props to those who got in on Duraev inside the distance earlier in the week when it was around even odds. I don't expect this fight to go to a decision. Next up, where we have Zubaira Tukhugov. Tukhugov, known well in the UFC, has had weight cutting issues in the past. Taking on Ricardo Ramos here, who he had that loss to Laurent Murphy, and we thought he might be very fragile fighter. Came back, won a hard fought fight last time out. Tukhugov, I think he could potentially down the stretch run into some issues here against Ramos. Tukhugov has the better wrestling, can control Ramos at times during the fight. Ramos is one of these fighters who likes to attempt low percentage maneuvers that could potentially have him end up in bad spots on the ground. Though I like Ramos. The longer this fight goes, I think that we're going to see him come to life. And he is an underdog in this spot. Plus 135 underdog, 7,900 in DraftKings. So give me Ricardo Ramos in this matchup. Next up, where we have a couple of ladies fighting. Volkov-Jandiroba taking on Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas coming in as a pretty moderate favorite. Minus 160, 8,200. Taking on Jandiroba plus $138,000 in DraftKings. Amanda Ribas was supposed to take on Angela Hill. That fight didn't happen. Amanda Ribas has been dealing with COVID. Moved away from ATT, did her camp at her home gym in Brazil. Jandiroba has she took on Carla Esparza and ended up really showing out in the past few fights here. She's gaining some steam, looking better and better every time out. This is a very competitive matchup. Initially, I was leaning more heavily towards Amanda Ribas. The more I looked into it, coming into that Mackenzie Dern fight, a lot of folks expected her to get ragdolled there, and look how that fight turned out. Ribas has been a little bit chinny in some previous fights. Granted, she took on Marina Rodriguez. We're aware of Marina Rodriguez and what she brings to the table here. Volkov-Jandiroba, though, should neutralize the jiu-jitsu of Ribas. I see this turning into a stand-up affair. Ribas is a much more athletic fighter who just the striking is prettier when you watch it. Jandiroba is looking to throw with power and doesn't really throw a lot of combinations. So this is a very, I suspect this line may close a little bit more. I think that Ribas shouldn't necessarily be a massive or even a moderate favorite here. I think this should be close to a pick 'em. I will be picking Ribas, but I think that Jandiroba is definitely in this fight. Next up, where we have Magomed Ankalaev taking on Volkan-Oezdemir in a light heavyweight matchup. I'll come out and say it. I believe Magomed Ankalaev is the best light heavyweight in mixed martial arts, and I have a lot of respect for all the skills that he brings to the table. He's taking on Volkan-Oezdemir in this spot, who is coming off of a brutal knockout loss. He is known as No Time. looks to land heavy strikes, striker by trade. This is a area where Ankalaev, he'll have multiple paths to victory here. If this fight hits the mat, Ankalaev's much better grappler. Ankalaev more defensively sound. The one knock on Ankalaev is his volume. He may not necessarily have the volume. He's more a counter striker, makes his opponents pay. Minus 305 at the betting window for Ankalaev, 9,100 in DraftKings. Taking on a Volkov-Oezdemir, who's coming in as a plus 235 underdog, only 7,100 in DK. Now, Volkov-Oezdemir does have a puncher's chance. He always does. Throws very, very heavy, fluid striker. Ankalaev, though, he's ready for it. We've seen what when Kutalaba came out, both of those fights. Kutalaba is dangerous typically early, completely blown out of the water there. Ankalaev in his fight against Krylov. Krylov's a very dangerous fighter. Also more well-rounded than Volkov-Oezdemir. I'll be picking Magomed Ankalaev in this spot. Next up, where we have Jing Liang Li taking on Gamzatov. Now, Li Jingliang is tough as nails, well aware, and he will fight hard for your money. Problem is, he's up against a Gamzatov who is a monster and only knows one pace. He goes full throttle, has a tremendous grappling edge in this fight. Let's cut to the chase here, where I have Gamzatov winning this fight and doing so inside the distance, minus 615 at the betting window. You see how wide this line has got, 9,500 in DK, plus 415 at the betting window for Li Jingliang, 6,700 in DraftKings. Now, can Li Jingliang survive in this spot? I don't know. I don't think he can, to be honest. I know he's tough. He hasn't been intimidated whatsoever at the scale, at the face-offs. So he's ready for war. Both of these guys are ready for war. This fight's not expected to go to a decision. Give me Gamzatov in that spot. Next up, where we have Alexander Volkov taking on Marcin Tybura. Marcin Tybura has gone on a bit of a run here. I believe it's a 5-fight heavyweight winning streak, taking on Alexander Volkov, who also has kind of morphed into this massive heavyweight. We knew he was tall, but he's put on some pounds and has performed much better after doing that. Volkov, inside of this larger octagon, will have more space to work, can stay at range. He's got to watch out, though, because Tybura does not have, Volkov does not have great takedown defense. And when he's down, he almost looks like a daddy long legs out there. Anytime he has to post to try to get up, it takes a long time for him to do so. Tough time to work your way back to that cage in the larger octagon as well. So if Marcin Tybura is able to land a takedown here or two, that could lead to significant stretches where he does have success. The problem is, though, Tybura can be a bit of a punching bag on the feet, and he's going to have to work hard to close distance, which I don't think he will be successful at, especially early. I see Volkov winning this fight inside the distance and doing so in either the second or third round. Look out for those props on Volkov to win via TKO in either the second or third round. Now, you look at the line here, minus 295 for Volkov, plus 230 for Tybura. Volkov, maybe a solid DraftKings play, throwing some heavy volume and also getting that TKO stoppage. So give me Alexander Volkov there. Now, interesting fight here where we have Islam Makhachev taking on Dan Hooker. This fight came together, was talked about. We have Hezbollah in the building later today. Very, very intriguing matchup where Dan Hooker is going to try to make Makhachev pay in space as Makhachev attempts to close the distance. That could be a recipe for disaster for Makhachev, though the more likely outcome here is that Makhachev gets the takedown, smothers Dan Hooker, gets some control time. And I would not be surprised to see Makhachev submit Dan Hooker in this spot. I'll be pulling for Dan Hooker in this spot. Though the pick, I mean, you look at the odds here too. So you have Islam Makhachev minus 580 at the betting window, 9,600, and Dan Hooker plus 380, 6,600 here. The beginning of the rounds are going to be the spot where Dan Hooker is the most live. He's going to have such a hard time working his way back to the feet once Makhachev has him on his back. So look for either the beginning of the first round or the beginning of the second round for Dan Hooker to attempt any flying strike in his arsenal, preferably a flying knee up the middle, to try to take out Islam Makhachev. I just don't think it's going to happen. So give me Makhachev to win. And he could possibly do that inside the distance. Now, co-main event, bantamweight strap on the line, where we have Peter Yan taking out Corey Sandhagen. Fascinating matchup where we have Peter Yan coming in as a minus 210 favorite, 8,800 in DraftKings, and Corey Sandhagen, who I've backed in many of his fights, all of his fights except his bout against Aljamain Sterling. 14-3 overall record, plus 170 at the betting windows, 7,400 DraftKings for Corey Sandhagen. Now, you look at Peter Yan. He's had some difficulty at range against some other opponents like Jimmy Rivera. You watch his fight against Jose Aldo. Aldo had some success early. But the thing is, Peter Yan has been able to figure out his opponents in time. Sometimes it takes 5 minutes. Sometimes it takes 4 minutes, 45 seconds. We saw what happened to him at the end of the first round, at the end of the second round. We saw what happened to Jose Aldo. We saw what happened to Aljamain Sterling. Corey Sandhagen, I thought he beat TJ Dillashaw last time out. He's got the length. He's got the willpower. He has some unorthodox striking techniques. He is his deficiencies are on the mat. His get-up game worked at times against Dillashaw, but Dillashaw also is an older fighter, up in his mid to late 30s, off of EPO now. And Peter Yan is he's a killer. He's a complete mixed martial artist. He brings a lot to the table here. And what I love about him is that he's able to figure out his opponents the longer the fight goes. And I see that happening here. I'll be picking Peter Yan. I think that he, at some point, is going to get Corey Sandhagen's number, and he's going to mix in his wrestling. Look for Corey Sandhagen to try to stay at range for as long as he can. And if he's able to do that, he becomes live in this spot. There are no certainties in this game. I'll be picking Peter Yan. I think that he is by far the more well-rounded fighter, and his killer instinct may come into play here, especially late. Look at those plus 1,500 or so round 4, round 5 Peter Yan props. Next up, main event of the evening, where we have Jan Blachowicz taking on Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira coming in as a significant underdog, plus 230, 7,200 in DraftKings. Taking on Blachowicz, who is minus 285, $9,000. You look at the career resurgency of Jan Blachowicz, it's been pretty incredible to watch. He was on the verge, man, against Dominic Reyes, significant underdog. Came in and we saw the Polish power on full display, working his way back into fights. Same can be said for Glover Teixeira. You know, he has been on the verge of being finished. He's had some great referees who have let the fight go on. He's also been able to turn the tide and showcase his tremendous wrestling and jiu-jitsu. That's one thing that doesn't get talked about enough. Glover Teixeira's wrestling game, it's very impressive. So if Blachowicz cannot get Teixeira out of there with a fight-ending strike, Teixeira does become live. Though conventional wisdom would lead me to state that Jan Blachowicz wins this fight in the distance, likely via TKO. After watching the tape, you've seen that Glover Teixeira is susceptible to getting outstruck on the feet, and you don't want to mess around with Jan Blachowicz' power. He has some serious heat on his punches. So I'll be picking Jan Blachowicz to win. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. Remember, go get what's yours. It's fight morning, UFC 267. This card begins at 10:30 a.m. And we are going to do our thing today. Cheers to everybody.